You're not even going to pretend to care, are you? The words just fell out of my mouth. I hadn't meant to say them. Not really. But there they were, hanging in the dead air of our apartment hallway. It was our anniversary tomorrow. Not an anniversary. Our 8th anniversary. And Miranda was leaning against the doorframe, her brand new, hard-shell suitcase, the color of champagne, standing upright beside her like a silent, smug witness. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, and she gave me that smirk. You know the one. It's not a smile. A smile has warmth. This was a dismissal, a little tight curl on one side of her lip that just said, "Oh, you're still talking?" It was a look I'd come to know well, and it made my stomach turn more than a full-blown, screaming fight ever could. "Oh, please, Liam," she said finally, her voice dripping with that exhausted, theatrical patience she saved just for me. She rolled her eyes, a full, dramatic rotation. "Don't be so dramatic. You'll survive one weekend without me. It's a girls' trip to Vermont with Lacey and Tasha. It's not a war deployment." I laughed, but it was that laugh, you know? The one that comes out sounding like a puff of dry air, like broken glass. It was hollow. "Funny," I said, because from where I'm standing, it kind of does feel like you're deserting the front lines. I was trying to keep it light. Maybe try to give her a chance to see how ridiculous this was. But my voice cracked, just a little. A tiny, stupid fissure. And she heard it. She always hears a crack. She let out a huge, put-upon sigh, like I was the one being unreasonable, like my feelings were an inconvenience she had to pack around, and they were pushing her over the carry-on weight limit. "I told you last week, Liam. I'm going." She was using her final voice, the one that meant the discussion was over, even though we hadn't had one. Don't do this. Don't act blindsided. It's manipulative." Manipulative? Me? The familiar heat rose in my chest, a hot, coiling feeling under my ribs. "Told me." I repeated, and I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice this time. "Yeah, you're right. You told me. You didn't ask me. You didn't say, 'Hey, Liam, I know it's our anniversary. What do you think about me leaving?' You said it like you were reading off a grocery list. Like milk, eggs, abandoning my husband." Her nails, freshly manicured and a deep blood red, tapped on the handle of her luggage. That sound, that impatient, rhythmic sound, it was the soundtrack to the last year of my life. "That's because I knew you'd turn it into this," she said, gesturing to me, to my hurt face, as if I was a problem, as if my reaction was the original sin. "This? What is this?" My voice was definitely shaking now, and I hated myself for it. "You mean me caring? You mean me having the ridiculous, old-fashioned assumption that our anniversary still meant something to you?" She rolled her shoulders, a perfect, elegant gesture, like she was brushing off dust, or, in this case, me. "It's just a date, Liam. It's a day on a calendar. Stop acting like I just slapped your mother." And that one landed, right in the solar plexus. I flinched. I physically flinched like I'd been hit, because she knew exactly what that meant to me. And before I could find the air to respond, she turned. Just turned away, pulled up the handle on her suitcase. "The Uber's here," she said, not even looking back. Her heels clicked down the narrow hallway of our apartment. Click, click, click. Each step was like a gavel banging out the verdict. Guilty. Guilty of caring. Guilty of being predictable. I didn't follow her. I didn't call after her. What was the point? What was I going to say? "Don't go? Please love me." I just stood there in the doorway, my heart pounding a dull, sick rhythm against my ribs, watching her silhouette. This woman I had loved for 8 years vanished behind the stainless steel elevator doors. And when they finally slid shut, sealing her smug, perfect, uncaring exit, the silence she left behind was so loud. It felt like the walls around me, the walls of this life I'd tried so hard to build, finally exhaled. But it wasn't in relief. It was in mourning. The hallway light above me, the one I'd been meaning to fix for a month, flickered. It cast these sharp, shifting shadows across the floor. I stared down at the pattern for a long moment, until my breath, which had been trapped in my chest, finally evened out, until the hot, useless fury settled into something colder, denser. It wasn't disbelief. No, that was the worst part. It was recognition. I knew this. I'd seen this version of her, in flashes, for a year. The dismissiveness, the casual cruelty. The way she'd started to look at me like I was a piece of furniture she'd inherited and didn't know what to do with. This wasn't some one-off act of selfishness. This was Miranda, not so subtly, drawing a line in the sand. And I was just finally seeing it. I walked back inside. Our apartment, it looked the same, but it didn't feel it. You know that feeling? When you come home and everything is exactly as you left it, but you're different, so it's different. The throw blanket, the one she'd spent a month picking out, was still draped over the couch's armrest. The kitchen smelled faintly of garlic and soy sauce from last night's takeout, my choice, which she complained about. And then I saw it, the photo, the big one, in the silver frame on the wall. Us, Cannon Beach, 3 years ago. I was laughing my arm around her, and she was smiling. A real smile, one that actually reached her eyes. Her hair was windswept. We looked happy. We looked real. We were frozen in a lie. A beautiful, sun-drenched, happy lie. And I couldn't look at it. I moved on autopilot. I closed the front door, locked the deadbolt, turned off the hallway light. In the kitchen, I rinsed out my coffee mug from that morning. A mug I hadn't taken more than 2 sips of, because I'd been too busy dreading this exact moment. That was my life. That was me. Liam. Predictable. Routine. I teach 8th grade history. I work at a public school that hasn't changed its hallway paint since the Reagan administration. My sneakers, they have this permanent layer of chalk dust on them from pacing between desks. I have lesson plans that are color-coded. By unit. By week. The kids like me. The parents tolerate me. And I'm good at it. As boring as that sounds. I'm not flashy. I'm not reckless. I'm not the guy who books spontaneous trips to Vermont without a second thought. I'm the guy who remembers to take the trash out on Tuesdays. I'm the guy who makes sure the bills are paid on time. I'm reliable. I'm solid. And somewhere along the line, Miranda had stopped seeing any value in that. She saw solid and reliable as boring and stuck. I leaned against the kitchen counter, my arms crossed, just staring at the door she just left through. I wasn't crying, not even close. But my hand were shaking, just slightly, because somewhere deep down, in that part of your gut that knows, I knew tonight was different. This wasn't her blowing off steam. This wasn't her just needing space. This was her slipping into a world where I no longer existed. A place where Liam the 8th grade teacher was invited, not even as a memory. A place where anniversaries were just dates on a calendar. And maybe she thought I'd just wait here, sit quietly in my corner, water the plants, grade some papers, wait for her to come back and tell me how okay the trip was. She thought I'd just sit still, but she'd misjudged something. She'd forgotten who I was before her. She'd forgotten what I'd been through to become this solid man. I don't sit still in a fire. I learned a long time ago how to walk right through it. And if you think this quiet, heartbroken history teacher was just going to let her burn down his life and walk away, you don't know me yet. You're not even going to pretend to care, are you? The words just fell out of my mouth. I hadn't meant to say them. Not really. But there they were, hanging in the dead air of our apartment hallway. It was our anniversary tomorrow. Not an anniversary. Our 8th anniversary. And Miranda was leaning against the doorframe, her brand new, hard-shell suitcase, the color of champagne, standing upright beside her like a silent, smug witness. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, and she gave me that smirk. You know the one. It's not a smile. A smile has warmth. This was a dismissal, a little tight curl on one side of her lip that just said, "Oh, you're still talking?" It was a look I'd come to know well, and it made my stomach turn more than a full-blown, screaming fight ever could. "Oh, please, Liam," she said finally, her voice dripping with that exhausted, theatrical patience she saved just for me. She rolled her eyes, a full, dramatic rotation. "Don't be so dramatic. You'll survive one weekend without me. It's a girls' trip to Vermont with Lacey and Tasha. It's not a war deployment." I laughed, but it was that laugh, you know? The one that comes out sounding like a puff of dry air, like broken glass. It was hollow. "Funny," I said, "because from where I'm standing, it kind of does feel like you're deserting the front lines." I was trying to keep it light. Maybe try to give her a chance to see how ridiculous this was. But my voice cracked, just a little. A tiny, stupid fissure. And she heard it. She always hears a crack. She let out a huge, put-upon sigh, like I was the one being unreasonable. Like my feelings were an inconvenience she had to pack around, and they were pushing her over the carry-on weight limit. I told you last week, Liam. I'm going. She was using her final voice, the one that meant the discussion was over, even though we hadn't had one. Don't do this. Don't act blindsided. It's manipulative. Manipulative? Me? The familiar heat rose in my chest, a hot, coiling feeling under my ribs. Told me. I repeated, and I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice this time. Yeah, you're right. You told me. You didn't ask me. You didn't say, "Hey, Liam, I know it's our anniversary. What do you think about me leaving?" You said it like you were reading off a grocery list. Like milk, eggs, abandoning my husband. Her nails, freshly manicured in a deep blood red, tapped on the handle of her luggage. That sound, that impatient, rhythmic sound, it was a soundtrack to the last year of my life. "That's because I knew you'd turn it into this," she said, gesturing to me, to my hurt face, as if I was a problem, as if my reaction was the original sin. This? What is this? My voice was definitely shaking now, and I hated myself for it. You mean me caring? You mean me having the ridiculous, old-fashioned assumption that our anniversary still meant something to you? She rolled her shoulders, a perfect, elegant gesture, like she was brushing off dust, or, in this case, me. It's just a date, Liam. It's a day on a calendar. Stop acting like I just slapped your mother. And that one landed, right in the solar plexus. I flinched. I physically flinched like I'd been hit, because she knew exactly what that meant to me. And before I could find the air to respond, she turned. Just turned away. Pulled up the handle on her suitcase. "The Uber's here," she said, not even looking back. Her heels clicked down the narrow hallway of our apartment. Click, click, click. Each step was like a gavel banging out the verdict. Guilty. Guilty of caring. Guilty of being predictable. I didn't follow her. I didn't call after her. What was the point? What was I going to say? Don't go? Please love me? I just stood there in the doorway, my heart pounding a dull, sick rhythm against my ribs, watching her silhouette. This woman I had loved for 8 years vanished behind the stainless steel elevator doors. And when they finally slid shut, sealing her smug, perfect, uncaring exit, the silence she left behind was so loud. It felt like the walls around me, the walls of this life I'd tried so hard to build, finally exhaled. But it wasn't in relief. It was in mourning. The hallway light above me, the one I'd been meaning to fix for a month, flickered. It cast these sharp, shifting shadows across the floor. I stared down at the pattern for a long moment, until my breath, which had been trapped in my chest, finally evened out, until the hot, useless fury settled into something colder, denser. It wasn't disbelief. No, that was the worst part. It was recognition. I knew this. I'd seen this version of her, in flashes, for a year. The dismissiveness, the casual cruelty, the way she'd started to look at me like I was a piece of furniture she'd inherited and didn't know what to do with. This wasn't some one-off act of selfishness. This was Miranda, not so subtly, drawing a line in the sand. And I was just finally seeing it. I walked back inside. Our apartment, it looked the same, but it didn't feel it. You know that feeling? When you come home and everything is exactly as you left it, but you're different, so it's different. The throw blanket, the one she'd spent a month picking out, was still draped over the couch's armrest. The kitchen smelled faintly of garlic and soy sauce from last night's takeout, my choice, which she complained about. And then I saw it, the photo, the big one, in the silver frame on the wall. Us, Cannon Beach, 3 years ago. I was laughing, my arm around her, and she was smiling. A real smile, one that actually reached her eyes. Her hair was windswept. We looked happy. We looked real. We were frozen in a lie. A beautiful, sun-drenched, happy lie. And I couldn't look at it. I moved on autopilot. I closed the front door, locked the deadbolt, turned off the hallway light. In the kitchen, I rinsed out my coffee mug from that morning. A mug I hadn't taken more than 2 sips of, because I'd been too busy dreading this exact moment. That was my life. That was me. Liam. Predictable. Routine. I teach 8th grade history. I work at a public school that hasn't changed its hallway paint since the Reagan administration. My sneakers, they have this permanent layer of chalk dust on them from pacing between desks. I have lesson plans that are color-coded, by unit, by week. The kids like me, The parents tolerate me. And I'm good at it. As boring as that sounds. I'm not flashy. I'm not reckless. I'm not the guy who books spontaneous trips to Vermont without a second thought. I'm the guy who remembers to take the trash out on Tuesdays. I'm the guy who makes sure the bills are paid on time. I'm reliable. I'm solid. And somewhere along the line, Miranda had stopped seeing any value in that. She saw solid and reliable as boring and stuck. I leaned against the kitchen counter, my arms crossed, just staring at the door she just left through. I wasn't crying, not even close. But my hand were shaking, just slightly, because somewhere deep down, in that part of your gut that knows, I knew tonight was different. This wasn't her blowing off steam. This wasn't her just needing space. This was her slipping into a world where I no longer existed. A place where Liam, the 8th grade teacher, was invited. Not even as a memory. A place where anniversaries were just dates on a calendar. And maybe she thought I'd just wait here. Sit quietly in my corner. Water the plants. Grade some papers. Wait for her to come back and tell me how okay the trip was. She thought I'd just sit still. But she'd misjudged something. She'd forgotten who I was before her. She'd forgotten what I'd been through to become this solid man. I don't sit still in a fire. I learned a long time ago how to walk right through it. And if you think this quiet, heartbroken history teacher was just going to let her burn down his life and walk away, you don't know me yet. I should have gone straight to bed when I got home. I should have just shut the lights off, crawled under the covers, and let the exhaustion of the week, of the night, just take me. That would have been the smart move, the healthy move. Instead, I wandered. I walked through the apartment like I was a stranger, a ghost visiting a life I used to know. I started noticing details, things I'd trained myself to ignore for months because looking at them too closely just hurt. The single, half-empty wine glass on the kitchen sink, the one she hadn't rinsed. Her sandals, the ones with the little straps, still kicked off by the front door. The faint trace of her floral shampoo lingering in the bathroom. A scent memory that was so strong it was like she hadn't even left at all. It was eerie. It was how present she still felt in the space. Even though she was hundreds of miles away in Vermont, this apartment was still hers. Her books on the nightstand. Her half-finished mug of tea on the coffee table. Her absence wasn't quiet. It was screaming. I ended up in the bedroom. I sat on the edge of our bed, my side, and just stared at the empty space next to me. The indent on her pillow was still there. And I sat there, phone in hand, my thumb just hovering over her name. The last call we'd had, a real, actual call, was 3 days ago. About the cable bill. The last real conversation, one where we actually, talked, I couldn't even remember. Weeks? Months? I told myself I just wanted to check in. That's what a husband does, right? It wasn't because I missed her, not because I was worried. It was just because it's a protocol. I tapped call. My heart did a stupid, heavy thud. The first ring sounded deafeningly loud in the silent apartment. Roaring. The second one made my stomach tighten. Roaring. By the fourth, I knew with a cold, sinking certainty that she was sitting in a resort room, probably with Tasha and Lacey, looking at her screen, seeing my name flash, and with that little smirk, she was letting it ring. She was letting it go. Hey, it's Miranda. You know what to do. Beep. Her voice. So breezy. So casual. So her. The voicemail greeting was just another performance. I'm fun. I'm busy. I'm not here for you. I didn't leave a message. What was the point? Hey, it's your husband, the one you deserted on our anniversary. Just call and see if you're having fun not being with me. I hung up. I sat there for 30 minutes, just staring at the wall. The anger was gone. The hurt was dull. What was left was that cold, analytical feeling. The historian in me. This wasn't an accident. This was her strategy. The one I'd figured out at the bar. This was her waiting for me to fill the vacuum with my guilt. So I tried again. I called. Roaring. Voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. I wasn't panicked. Not exactly. But that space between concern and cold, hard, clarifying rage is thin. It's a razor-thin edge, and I was walking it barefoot. This time, I texted her. A controlled text. The kind that, if this ever came up later, would make me look like the reasonable one. Me, hey, just checking in. Let me know you're okay. I hit send. The little blue bubble just sat there. It didn't say delivered. It didn't say read. It just sat, an unanswered question in a digital void. I stared at that blinking cursor for a full minute. Then I shut the screen off and tossed the phone, maybe a little too hard, onto her pillow. That was the part that got me, I think. The refusal. The deliberate, calculated choice to not just ignore me, but to ignore the protocol. The basic human decency of, I'm okay. Miranda could be cruel with her timing. That wasn't new. But this felt different. This felt architected. It felt like she knew exactly when I started to crack, and she was timing her silence down to the second just to see how far I'd unravel. I lay back against the bed, fully clothed, just staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly, click, 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 above me. The soft hum filled the room, but it didn't soothe anything. It felt like a clock, counting down to something I hadn't agreed to yet. My mind just wouldn't shut up. It kept circling the same stupid, useless questions. Who was she with? Really? Why wouldn't she answer? Was this the plan all along? Was the fight about the anniversary just a pretext? Just a stage-managed argument she started so she could storm out, play the victim, and go do whatever this was? The ceiling, for all its stillness, felt alive. It felt like it had stories to tell if I just listened long enough. Shadows shifted across the paint, mimicking shapes that didn't exist. One looked like her silhouette, standing by the door with her suitcase. Another, her outline curled up on the couch, arms folded, face unreadable. I turned onto my side, burying my face in my arm, hoping sleep would just drag me down. It didn't. Every creak of the old apartment building's walls felt 100 times louder. Every distant car horn on the street sounded like a call I'd missed. And the sheets, which were normally cool and familiar, felt foreign. They felt hostile. I did something I hadn't done in years. I rolled over, all the way over, to her side of the bed, and I buried my face in her pillow. It smelled like her. That sweet, ambery, floral scent she always said was light enough to be interesting. She had a way of making everything about her sound like a poem, even her perfume. But lying there, surrounded by that soft, expensive, fake scent, it didn't comfort me. It burned. Because for all the years I've been good, for all the times I've been dependable and kind and present, for all the lesson plans I'd color-coded, and the bills I'd paid on time and the almond milk I'd remembered to buy, this was what I got. A voicemail greeting, a blank screen, and a pillow that smelled like someone who couldn't be bothered to even say goodnight. Around 3:14 a.m., I know, because I looked at the clock, I sat bolt upright. I was done. Done waiting. Done wondering. Done this. I pulled the blankets off, paced the kitchen, poured a glass of water I didn't drink, stared at nothing, then paced back to the bed. I stared at the ceiling again. And somewhere between the fifth and sixth time, I told myself not to be an idiot, not to cry, not to care. I felt it. That shift, it wasn't a scream. It wasn't a crack. It was just a quiet recalibration, like a compass needle, spinning wildly, had finally, click, found north, like my soul, or whatever part of me was still me, had just moved an inch closer to something I'd been ignoring for a very, very long time. It was a feeling of finally accepting something you didn't want to admit. She wasn't lost. She wasn't in trouble. She wasn't forgetting to call. She was leaving, in real time, and I needed to stop chasing footsteps that had already, very deliberately, disappeared down the hall. Our anniversary fell on a Saturday that year, and that Saturday, it was the longest, shortest, and most clarifying day of my entire life. I woke up, after not really sleeping, to the sound of my 3 a.m. realization still ringing in my ears. She wasn't lost. She was leaving. The apartment was too bright. The morning sun streamed in, mocking me. It was a perfect, beautiful July day. The kind of day we would have, well, the kind of day we should have spent packing a picnic or driving to the coast. Instead, I was a ghost in my own home. I made coffee, but I didn't drink it. I turned on the TV, but I didn't watch it. I just sat on the couch, staring at the blank screen, my phone on the cushion next to me. The silence of that phone, it was its own character in the room. It was a presence. It was a weight. It was a loud, screaming, neon sign of her indifference. The 3 a.m. calls had been a moment of weakness, a final, pathetic plea to the woman I used to know. The silence that followed, that was the answer. I checked our shared calendar, just to see. There it was. 8 years, with a little champagne bottle emoji next to it. An emoji she had put there probably 2 months ago, in a moment when it was still convenient to pretend to be a wife. The day just limped by. Noon came and went. I ate a slice of bread, standing over the sink. I felt hollowed out, not even angry anymore, just empty. I was in that awful gray limbo, the place after the anger, but before the acceptance, the place where you're just waiting for the final definitive proof that your world is actually truly over. You're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Around 5 p.m., my phone buzzed. Not her. I knew instantly it wouldn't be her. It was Jonah. Jonah, hey man, me and Tyler are grilling over at my place by the lake. Just some friends. Get over here. Beer's cold. I stared at the text. My first instinct was to say no, to curl up, to stay here in the mausoleum of our apartment and just rot, to marinate in the misery. But the thought of sitting there alone on my anniversary in the dark, waiting for a text that was never, ever coming, it was quite possibly the most pathetic image I could conjure. And that, more than anything, is what got me off the couch. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Even if she'd never know. I'd know. So I texted back, on my way. I splashed water on my face. I pulled on a clean t-shirt. I didn't look in the mirror. Jonah's backyard was a complete opposite of my apartment. It was aggressively alive. It buzzed with soft music, some classic Tom Petty station. It was loud with laughter, with the thwack of a cornhole bag hitting the board, with the sound of kids I didn't know shrieking as they ran through a sprinkler. The air was thick with the smell of grilled corn and charcoal. Paper plates were bending under the weight of burgers and potato salad. It was normal. It was a snapshot of life I wasn't living. Jonah saw me, gave me that you made it nod, and shoved a cold beer into my hand without a word, before turning back to the grill. I tried. I swear I tried. I tried to let it all in. I tried to feel present. I tried to be grateful for friends, for the food, for the fact that I wasn't alone in a dark room. But it was like, it was like I was watching it all through a thick glass screen. I could hear the sound, but it was muffled. Everyone's joy it sounded like it was coming from the next room over. My social camouflage was perfect, though. I'd been a teacher for a decade. I knew how to look interested when I wasn't. I nodded. I smiled. I laughed when everyone else laughed. I drank the beer, but I wasn't there. I was floating about 3 feet behind myself, just watching. And then I heard her name. Miranda. It just cut through the air, through the music, through the laughter. It was a woman I vaguely recognized from Jonah's orbit. Ava, maybe? She was sitting by the cooler, scrolling on her phone, showing the screen to the girl next to her. I didn't even know she was dating someone new, Ava said offhandedly. She looks amazing. My blood went cold. No, not just cold. It just stopped. The Tom Petty song, the laughter, the sizzling of the grill. It all just faded out. I turned. I'm pretty sure my body moved before my brain gave it permission. Who? I asked. My voice sounded sharp. Too sharp. The girl, Ava, looked up. She was pretty, with kind eyes, and she looked startled. Like, who is this random, intense dude? Oh, she said. Miranda. Miranda Shaw. My friend from college follows her. She's in Vermont, I think. Her stories are insane. My heart was a stone. Wait, I said, and I was already moving toward her, my hand out. My phone's dead. Can I see that? It was a terrible lie. My phone was in my pocket, a heavy, silent brick. But I needed. Oh, yes, sure, she said, her brow furrowed in confusion. I think you just missed one, but she just posted this. She turned the phone toward me. It was an Instagram story, one of those quick 10-second clips. It was already looping, playing back to the beginning. And the world, it just stopped. It was her, Miranda. Her hair was down, not in the I'm just relaxing way, but in the I spent an hour on this way, all perfect sun-kissed waves. She was on a balcony, sunlit shoulders bare, a cocktail bright pink in her hand, and she was laughing, not just laughing. She was leaning into a man I had never, ever seen before. He was handsome, I guess, in that generic, I own a boat kind of way, dark hair, expensive watch, a smile that looked like it had been bought and paid for. The 10-second loop started again. Frame 1, Miranda, laughing. Her hand was on his chest. just resting there, casually, like it belonged there. Frame 2. The man, the stranger, leaned in. He whispered something in her ear. Frame 3. Miranda didn't pull away. She didn't laugh. She smirked. That same smug, I'm in control, smirk she'd given me in a hallway. Frame 4. The camera panned, and I saw his hand. His hand was on her waist. A low, possessive, familiar grip. Frame 5. The loop ended with her turning back to camera, that smirk still on her face. And she blew a kiss. A little, aren't I naughty kiss, right at the lens. And then the caption at the bottom, in that breezy, looping script. Guess who found some vacation company? Winking face. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just a feeling. It was a physical fact. My lungs they'd seized. Something sharp and cold and blindingly, terrifyingly clear cracked through my chest. This wasn't a girl's trip. This wasn't space. This wasn't an accident. This was him. The reason. The almond milk was a lie. The girl's trip was a lie. The fight in the hallway was a script. It was her excuse to leave, to be with him, and to make it my fault. And in that exact second, that precise, universe-ending moment where my entire 8-year marriage dissolved in my hands. Boom. The first firework exploded over the lake. A deafening, gut-punch crack that shook the air. Everyone around me, Jonah, Tyler, the kids, Ava, everyone screamed and cheered. They all turned, their faces lit with sudden, beautiful, celebratory light, red and gold and blue. They all turned away from me. They all looked up at the sky. But I couldn't look up, because I was still staring at the screen, at the 10-second, silent, looping video of my life's end. Laugh, lean, hand, whisper, smirk, kiss, boom. The sky was erupting in a symphony of celebration. It was our anniversary, and the world was celebrating. And I was gone. I handed the phone back, my hand steady. I was almost impressed with how steady it was. Ava, or whoever she was, finally looked at me, her face a mask of dawning horror. She'd put together. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Liam, I thought you knew. I am so sorry. I nodded. I couldn't speak. I swallowed the acid, the bile that was rising in my throat, and I stepped away. I didn't run. I walked past the cooler, past the grill, past the laughing circle of my friends, all pointing at the sky. I walked until the music dimmed, until the voices faded, until the lights of the party were just a warm glow behind me. I walked until I reached the edge of the lake. I stood there in the dark, in the quiet, the smell of sulfur and lake water in the air. The explosions behind me were still echoing. Boom, pop, whistle, boom. They were like applause. It was our anniversary, and she was somewhere else, celebrating with someone else. And she'd posted it. She'd posted it for the world to see. She'd posted it for me to see. That's when I knew this wasn't a wound. A wound is something that happens to you. A wound is an accident. This was a decision. This was a choice. It was a 10-second, looping public declaration. This wasn't a tragedy. This was proof. This wasn't her leaving me. This was her showing me she was gone. And in a way, that was the last gift I'd ever accept from her. It was the gift of clarity. It was the gift of permission. I was no longer the husband waiting by the phone. I was the man who had just been handed the proof. And proof is something a historian knows exactly what to do with. I didn't sleep. Not in the way you'd think. I wasn't tossing and turning. I wasn't pacing. After the fireworks, after the proof, the anger just burned out. It was a flash fire, and it had consumed everything. All the hurt, all the doubt, all the maybe I'm the problem, gaslighting I'd been force-feeding myself for a year. It was all just gone. And what was left was a stillness. Sunday morning arrived, slow and gray, but the world outside didn't match the world inside me. The city seemed half awake, like even the streets weren't ready to face the day. There was no rage in me. Not anymore. Something colder had settled in overnight, like frost, the kind that settles on a window, making everything on the other side crystal clear, but also cold, sharp, and hard. I wasn't pacing. I wasn't ranting. I wasn't breaking dishes. I was just still, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I made coffee. I showered. I put on the opposite of my teacher sneakers. I put on my one good pair of leather dress shoes, the ones I wore to weddings and funerals. This felt like both. By 9:30 a.m. on a Sunday, I'd had to pay extra for the emergency weekend consult. I was sitting in a midtown office. The little gold plaque on the door read, Carla McKay, ESQ, Family Law. The office was exactly what I needed it to be. It was cold, not just in temperature, but in design. The chairs were this hard, minimalist, black leather. The walls were a sterile, offensive shade of beige. There was no warmth. There was no, it's going to be okay, art on the walls. This wasn't a place for therapy. This was a place for transactions. Carla McKay walked in, and she was a human version of the office. She was brisk, sharp, and wore a suit that looked like it cost more than my car. She was in her 50s, with eyes that looked like they'd seen every lie, every betrayal, and were profoundly, deeply unimpressed by all of it. She sat. She didn't offer me coffee or water. She just opened a file. Mr. Shaw, she said, her voice like gravel. Your call sounded urgent. I just nodded, and I said the words I'd been practicing in my head all morning. She's having an affair. It's our anniversary. I want it done quickly, and I want it done cleanly. Carla didn't blink. She didn't offer condolences. She didn't say, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. She just nodded, once, like I'd just given her a weather report. And I swear I could have kissed her for it. That's what I was paying for. Not empathy. Efficiency. Do you have proof? She asked, her pen already moving, poise over form. It's not legally necessary in this state, but it helps. It clarifies the timeline. It helps with negotiations. I didn't flinch. I just reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out my phone, and slid it across the polished, dark wood desk. Start with her Instagram account, I said. My voice was calm. I was almost impressed. It's public. The story she posted last night. From Killington, Vermont. You want to screenshot that with the location tag and the caption. I watched her. Her, a stranger, picking up my phone. Her nails, which were short and unpolished, tapped on the screen. She found the profile. She watched the 10-second loop. I watched her watch the kiss. The hand on the waist. The smirk. She watched it once. Twice. Then a third time, pausing on the frame with his hand on her waist. Vacation company, she read, her voice flat. She looked up at me. And this is your anniversary. Today. Yes. She nodded. This is not ambiguous. She kept working. And in that moment, watching the stranger break down the end of my life into legal, actionable sections, assets, shared accounts, lease on the apartment, it was the most therapeutic thing I'd ever experienced. It was validation. It was a doctor finally looking at the x-ray and saying, see, right there, it is broken. You weren't imagining it. You're not crazy. All the gaslighting, all the months of her making me feel like I was the crazy one, the needy one, the one who was too sensitive, it all just dissolved. Right there, under the fluorescent lights of a lawyer's office, on a Sunday morning. The proof was on the screen. The proof was real. I signed where she pointed. My hand, I noted, wasn't shaking. By the time I left her office an hour later, the clouds had parted. The sun came through, weak and uncertain, but it was there. It hit the pavement. I didn't take the subway. I didn't get a cab. I walked the 53 blocks home. I needed the time. I needed the motion. I needed to feel my feet on the concrete, to feel myself moving through the world again. Not her world. My world. Back at the apartment, it was quiet, but it wasn't the screaming, heavy silence of yesterday. It was just quiet. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee. The smell, my God, the smell filled the entire space. And I realized that smell, it was like armor. It was my smell. It used to be something we shared. Weekend mornings in pajamas, both of us reaching for the sugar jar at the same time. But it wasn't ours anymore. It was mine. I sat at the kitchen table, the mug in my hand, the legal papers Carla had emailed me, already printed, stacked neatly beside me. And it was in that silence, with the smell of coffee and the faint on the fridge, that something clicked. This wasn't about revenge. I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't want to ruin her. That was her game. That was her playbook. No, this was about reclaiming. It was about reclaiming the space, this apartment, this life, the space I had been for years, shrinking myself to fit inside. Miranda hadn't just cheated on me. That was just the final, ugly symptom. She had rewritten the rules of who we were, so slowly, so subtly, that I didn't even notice, and I had let her. All the dismissive shrugs. All the time she called me too sensitive or boring. All the, it's not a big deal, Liam, gaslighting. The empty, exhausted apologies. Her apologies to me that I somehow ended up feeling guilty for. Every single one. It had just been a little chip, chipping away at something I thought was solid. But now I saw it. Clearly, I wasn't broken. I wasn't the problem. I was just done. I was done pretending she hadn't broken something. The phone buzzed. Once, on the counter, an old, forgotten message from my work email. I ignored it. I took another slow, deep sip of coffee. I watched the steam curl upward, like smoke from a fire that had already been put out. That was the thing I realized. She thought I'd fall apart. She thought the silence, this girl's trip, would keep me frozen. She thought I'd be a wreck. She was counting on me to be a wreck. But silence is just space. And I was finally learning how to fill it. I waited until late afternoon. This wasn't a move to make in the heat of the moment. This was an angry 3 a.m. phone call. This was strategy. This was a move a historian would make. Calculated, researched, and executed with a precise understanding of the context. I sat at my kitchen table, the signed, printed copies of the legal filing in a neat, white envelope beside me, and I thought about how to deliver this message. My first instinct, the old Liam's instinct, was to just text her, send her a long, rambling, emotional novel, explaining why I was hurt, why what she did was wrong, why she'd forced my hand. But as I played that out in my head, I saw it for what it was. I saw her, in her resort robe, with him in the background, reading my text. I saw her smirk. I saw her show it to Lacey and Tasha. "Oh, look," she'd say. "He's spiraling. He's so predictable." A text was a request. It was me, asking her to read my pain. And I was done asking her for anything. So, call her directly? No, absolutely not. That's what she wants. That's the scene she's been waiting for. She wants me called to scream, to cry, to lose control. She wants a performance. She needs to be the victim, the one who was attacked by her unstable husband. If I called and yelled, she would win. She'd hang up, turn to her friends, and say, You see what I have to deal with? This is why I'm leaving him." I was not going to give her that scene. I was not going to be the villain in her next story. So, if I couldn't text and I couldn't call her, how do you deliver a message that can't be spun? How do you flip the board on someone who thinks they're the only one playing the game? You don't talk to the queen. You talk to her court. You find the weak link. The one who's a gossip, but not a true believer. The one who's in the cool girl circle, but is just a little too loud, a little too eager, a little flustered. Lacey. It had to be Lacey. Tasha was too cold, too much like Miranda. But Lacey was a talker. Lacey was a reactor. Lacey would deliver the news not as a message, but as a panic. She would, in her shock, do my work for me, and she'd deliver the blow with all the chaotic, messy, unfiltered emotion that I was refusing to show. So I waited until 4:30 p.m. on a Sunday. I knew their rhythms. I'd been forced to listen to their brunch plans for years. By now, the mimosas had worn off. They were lounging. They were gossiping. They were probably scrolling through their own photos from the night before, deciding which lie to post next. I picked up my phone. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear. It was from adrenaline. It was a feeling a soldier must get right before he moves out of the trench. It was the first, truly offensive move I had made in our entire marriage. I dialed Lacey's number. The phone rang twice. Her voice came through, exactly as I'd pictured, breezy, unbothered, slightly drunk on Sunday afternoon laziness. "He," she said, drawing the word out. "Lacey," I said. My voice. I'd practiced it. I'd wanted it to be calm. But it came out cold. It came out like a river stone. "It's Liam." The silence on the other end was instant. The breeziness just vanished. I could picture her, sitting up on a couch, her feet hitting the floor. "Oh," she said. Her voice was a different octave. "Hey, Liam, what's up? I just need you to do me a favor," I said. I was standing in my kitchen, but I was picturing her in that resort room, next time Miranda checks in. Or, if you talk to her, I just need you to let her know something. "Okay," she said, drawing the word out again, but this time It was laced with suspicion, with dread. Just let her know, I said, my voice even, that the divorce proceedings are underway. The paperwork's been filed. That's all. Silence. A long, gaping, absolute void. I could hear her just breathing. When Lacey finally spoke, she sounded like someone who had just been doused in ice water. Wait, what? What did you say? I said the paperwork has been filed, Lacey. I'm divorcing her. You're serious? She squeaked. You're divorcing her? But you guys always seem so what, Lacey? I cut her off. My voice was still calm, but there was an edge now. The edge of the man from the courthouse steps. So stable? So good? Was that the story? Because that's the part you're all supposed to see. That's the performance. But the show's over. Oh my God, she whispered. I could hear her standing up, pacing. I heard the muffled sound of her covering the phone. Talking to someone in the room with her? No, probably Tasha. Oh my God, Tasha, he's Liam. Does she know? No, I said simply. But she will. As soon as you hang up and call her. I don't want to get in the middle of this, she said, her voice rising into a full-on panic. This was not in her brunch script. Liam, this is a lot. Maybe you should wait until she's back. You guys just need to talk. Talk. I almost laughed. I did wait, Lacey. I waited for months. I waited through the lying. I waited through the silence. I waited through the condescension. I took a breath. This isn't sudden. It's overdue. I'm not asking you to get in the middle. I'm not asking you to explain it or fix it or have an opinion on it. I leaned against the counter, my knuckles white on the edge. I'm just asking you to pass along the message. She deserves to know where this is headed. Lacey didn't answer right away. Just that high-pitched, panic breathing. And in that pause, that strange, weightless clarity, it just settled over me. Okay. Lacey's voice was thin now. A whisper. Okay, Liam. I'll tell her. Thank you, I said. And I hung up. I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I didn't wait for her to ask more questions. I hung up. I set the phone down on the counter, face down, and I let out a breath. A breath I think I've been holding for a year, maybe longer. My hands were shaking. That adrenaline, it was fading, leaving me feeling hollowed out but clean. My eyes landed on my coffee mug, the one from this morning, the one I'd sat with, staring at the legal papers. It was still there, half full of cold, black, bitter coffee. I looked at it. That was the old me, the sit and wait me, the let's analyze it one more time me, the maybe she'll call me. I picked up the mug. I walked to the sink, and I poured it out. I watched the cold, dark liquid spiral down the drain, disappearing with final, gurgling sound. The act felt symbolic. It felt final. I was draining the remnants of something that had already gone cold. Outside, the city lights were just beginning to flicker on, one window at a time. A breeze came to the cracked kitchen window, rustling the takeout menu that was still pinned to the fridge with a magnet from some vacation we'd taken, a vacation where we'd probably also been performing for each other. I should have felt shaken. I should have been terrified. I just detonated my own life. But I wasn't. I just felt prepared. I could see it. I could see the scene playing out in that Vermont resort room. Lacey's name flashing on Miranda's phone. Miranda, annoyed, answering it. What? I'm busy. And then Lacey's voice, high, panicked, stumbling over the words. He knows, Miranda. He knows. He filed for, he's divorcing you. I could see Miranda's face. The smirk just evaporating. The confusion. The panic. The sudden, cold, adrenaline dump of her world. The world she controlled, slipping right through her fingers. I wondered how fast she'd call me. I wondered if she'd even try to lie. I wondered what new, desperate, tear-filled performance she'd try to stage through the phone. And I realized I wasn't bracing for it anymore. I wasn't dreading the spin. I wasn't rehearsing what I'd say when she tried to drag me back into another circle of emotional gymnastics. I'd already spoken, and my words weren't up for revision. It started exactly 15 minutes after I hung up with Lacey. 15 minutes. I just had enough time to walk to the living room, sit down in my armchair, the one that still had the faint indent on my body from the night before, and just breathe. 15 minutes. That's how long it took the message to travel from a panicked Lacey to a probably annoyed Tasha, and finally to the phone of the Queen herself, shattering her mimosa-fueled Sunday afternoon. My phone, which I had left on the kitchen counter, lit up. The screen glowed, a harsh, demanding white in the dim afternoon light. It was an incoming call. Miranda. The name flashed once, twice, 3 times. The phone was on silent, but I could feel the vibration from across the room, a desperate, buzzing, angry sound against the wood of the counter. Bezizzes, bezizzes, bezizzes. It was like a broken alarm, a warning flare. It was a sound of controlled explosion, the one I had set finally going off. I didn't move. I sat there in the armchair and I watched it. I watched my wife's name flash, over and over, demanding my attention, demanding the stage. It rang for a full minute, then stopped. The screen went dark. The silence that followed was profound. It was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. 30 seconds later, it started again. Miranda. Bezizzes, bezizzes, bezizzes. The old Liam, the Liam of 24 hours ago, would have been on his feet before the first ring finished. He would have been sprinting to the phone, his heart in his throat, a frantic, jumbled apology already forming on his lips. I'm sorry. I don't know what she said. It was a mistake. The old Liam would have been terrified of her anger. But the new Liam, the man sitting in the armchair, the man who would stare at a 10-second loop of his own humiliation, he just watched. He felt distant, like a historian, observing a predictable, well-documented historical event. Yes, he'd murmur, this is a panic phase. Right on schedule. The call stopped. Then, immediately it started again. She wasn't even waiting. She was just mashing the call button. Desperate. This one I let ring. And ring. I counted them. 12 rings. Until her carrier gave up and punted her back to the voicemail she'd been sending me to all weekend. The phone screen went dark. The apartment was still. And then the text started. They came in a flood. A rapid-fire, chaotic digital scream. The phone lit up with each one, a series of white flashes on the counter. BZZ Miranda, 3:47 p.m. Liam. What is this? BZZ Miranda, 3:47 p.m. Lacey said something insane. BZZ Miranda, 3:48 p.m. You need to call me. Right now. BZZ Miranda, 3:48 p.m. This isn't funny. This isn't a joke. What did you do? I read them. From across the room, I read the subtext. What is this? Equals what is this new version of you that I don't control? Lacey said something insane. Equals Lacey broke the script, and I'm angry. Call me right now. Equals an order, not a request. A command. Get back in your box. This isn't funny. Equals this is terrifying, because for the first time, I don't know what you're going to do next. I stood up, slowly. I walked into the kitchen, not to the phone, but to the kettle. I filled it with water. I found the box of peppermint tea, the one I bought for myself last week, because I'd read it was calming. I put a bag in my mug, not one of the matching set, one she bought. As the kettle began to hiss, the phone rang again. Miranda. I let it go to voicemail. BZZ Miranda, 3:51 p.m. Are you really going to ignore me? After what I've been through this weekend, I actually laughed. A single, short, bitter puff of air. After what you've been through, the audacity, it was breathtaking. BZZ Miranda, 3:52 p.m. You can't just do this, Liam. You don't get to just blow up our entire lives over a text message to my friend. That is cowardly. Cowardly. That was rich. The kettle shrieked. I poured the hot water over the tea bag, the steam rising up, fog in my glasses. I took a slow sip, letting the sharp, clean, uncomplicated flavor hit the back of my throat. I stood there by the kitchen window, cradling the warm mug. The phone buzzed again on the counter behind me. A new text. I didn't even turn to look. I looked out the window instead. The view wasn't much. Just traffic trickling down 12th Street. The red glow and haze of brake lights, stretching for blocks as the sun began to dip. But somehow tonight it felt wider. It felt like I could see for miles. Like I'd opened a window in my own chest, and something old and stale and heavy had just flown out. The phone rang again. Beziz, beziz. I leaned back against the frame of the window, one shoulder pressed to the cool glass. My breath left a soft fog on the pane. It was almost poetic. All those times, all those hundreds of times, I had been the one on the other side of this. I had been the one sending the, "Hey, are you okay?" text into the void. I had been the one staring at my phone, my stomach in knots, just waiting for her to text back, waiting for her to come home, waiting for permission to not be worried, waiting for her to give me the scraps of her attention. And all those times, she'd been the one in control. She'd been the one, I'm sure, looking at her phone, seeing my name and hitting ignore. She'd been the one, out with her friends, rolling her eyes. Oh, it's just Liam. He's always worrying. Silence, that had been her weapon, her favorite one. She'd use it to punish me, to control me, to make me feel small and needy and desperate. She would draw all affection, all conversation, all presence, until I finally broke, until I apologized for whatever it was I'd done, usually for just having feelings. Now, I was the one who was silent, not out of cruelty, not as a strategy, but just out of choice, out of peace. I didn't owe her my attention anymore. I didn't owe her an explanation. My God, I didn't owe her anything. Not after what I'd seen. Not after the months of dismissals, the gaslighting, the shrinking feeling that I had somehow become invisible in my own home. The phone rang again. Miranda. I watched the screen fade to black. The quiet returned, and it was beautiful. I stayed by that window for, I don't know, an hour, maybe more. The tea went cold. The sun disappeared completely, leaving the city a network of glittering, anonymous lights. My reflection in the glass grew darker, blurrier, until it was just a shadow. It was like even the version of me that had waited for her, that sad, predictable, hopeful fool, was starting to fade. The phone had buzzed a few more times. More texts. I hadn't read them. Finally, I picked it up. The screen was cool in my hand. It lit up, showing a new call. Miranda. I didn't answer. I pressed the volume down button on the side, and then I held it just for a second, and I turned the ringer off. I turned the vibration off. I set the phone, face down on the counter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't anything. I was just done. The historian had closed the book. The teacher had dismissed the class. I was done. I didn't sleep much that night. But, it was different. It wasn't the anxious, heart-pounding, stomach-churning non-sleep I'd been suffering through for months. That old, familiar, what did I do wrong insomnia. No, this was a different kind of wakefulness. It was a stillness of a battlefield after the battle. The air was clear. The fog had lifted. The adrenaline was gone, and now all that was left was the quiet and the work of assessing the wreckage. I wasn't anxious. I was just waiting. The morning light crept into the blinds, casting those soft, golden strips across the floor. I got up. I made coffee, the same way I always did. 2 scoops, no sugar, pour over. The ritual of it was grounding. It was my ritual. My phone sat where I'd left it, face down on the counter, silent. I'd turned the ringer back on before bed, not because I wanted her to call, but because I was ready for the conversation. I was no longer a target. I was a historian, just waiting for the primary source to show up so I could close the file. I sat at the kitchen table, just like I had the day before. The apartment was quiet. Even the city below seemed hushed, almost thoughtful, like it knew something had changed. My phone sat there. I drank my coffee. The sun climbed higher. And then, at 8:17 a.m., it lit up. Miranda. I watched it ring. Once. Twice. I let it ring. Just long enough for her to feel it. Just long enough for her to sit in that panic, on her end, in her resort room, wondering if I would ever pick up, wondering if I had just disappeared. I was letting her feel, just for a second, what she'd been making me feel for a year. On the 4th ring, I picked it up. I didn't say hello. I didn't say her name. I just answered. Liam? Her voice. My God, it was direct. It wasn't her smooth in control, it's just a date voice. It wasn't her, I'm so busy and important voice. This was ragged. This was the sound of a queen who had just found the castle gates locked from the inside. I'm here, I said. My voice was calm. It sounded, even to me, like a stranger's. Oh my God, Liam, she burst out, and the sob that came with it was a performance. Was it? I couldn't tell. And that was the new, cold, clarifying thing. I realized I didn't care if the tears were real or not. It didn't matter. They were just noise. Are you really doing this? She choked out. You're actually filing for divorce? Over a text message from Lacey? I took a slow sip of my coffee. It was hot. It was grounding. No, I said. No. No. I'm not divorcing you over a text message from Lacey. The silence on her end was full of confusion. She didn't know the script. This was all improv, and she was terrible at it. I don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. What did I do? What did I do that was so awful you couldn't even talk to me first? There it was, the first move in her old playbook, the victim card. What did I do? I thought about the 10-second video. I thought about the stranger's hand. I thought about the kiss. I thought about almond milk. You'll get a copy of the filing. I said, my voice still perfectly, terrifyingly calm. It's all in there. It's very clear. Silence. Complete heavy. What did it just say? Silence. And then she laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It wasn't a joyful kind, or even a bitter one. It was fragile. It was a sound of glass, already cracked, try to hold its own weight. You can't be serious, she whispered. Liam, listen to yourself. This is crazy. We're just going through a rough patch. That's all this is. All couples go through this. I didn't answer. I just let her talk. I let her spin. Okay, yes, she said, her voice getting stronger, her new narrative forming. I went on a trip, and maybe I needed a little space. Maybe you've been a little distant. But this, you're going to throw away 8 years, over a girls' weekend. There was a guy in your story, Miranda. I said it so quietly, it was almost a whisper, but it cut through her building hysteria like a scalpel. She stopped, just stopped. What? On Instagram, I said. My voice was flat, clinical, like a teacher reading a textbook. The story you posted last night, at the resort. There was a guy, dark hair, expensive watch. I was reciting it from memory. You leaned into him. His hand was on your waist. Your hand was on his chest. You blew a kiss at the camera. I took another sip of coffee. You tagged the resort. Publicly. On our anniversary. She stammered. It was a physical, audible stumble of a sound. That was nothing, she said, her voice suddenly high-pitched defensive. That was a joke. It was just a stupid inside joke with the girls. That guy, he's no one. He's a bartender or something. I didn't even talk to him. It was such a bad lie. It was so clumsy. It was, in its own way, the most insulting part of this whole thing. She didn't even respect me enough to come up with a good lie. You didn't talk to him, I repeated. Not a question. A statement. No, of course not. It was stupid. It was optics. Optics, I said. You're right. I leaned forward in my chair. You smiled at the camera like it was a game. You knew exactly what that story would look like. Miranda. And you posted it anyway. She stammered again, and then it happened. The slip. The one true, unfiltered, accidental moment of honesty. I didn't think you'd see it, she blurted out. The words hung in the air. I closed my eyes. There it is. She realized what she'd said. I could hear her sharp, panicked and take a breath. I mean, she tried to backpedal. I didn't mean anything by it. It was just for my friends. I didn't mean for you to analyze it. Exactly, I said. My voice was quiet, but it was like a gavel. Done. Liam, she said, her voice changing again. The anger was gone. The fake laughter was gone. Now it was just panic. Liam, wait. Just wait. I did wait, I said, and my voice had cracked. Just once. Not with sadness. With anger. The first real, hot crack in my calm. I did wait, Miranda. I waited for months. I waited while you stopped coming home on time. I waited while you started looking through me like I was a ghost. I waited while you turned our entire marriage into a performance, where I was the only one who didn't know his lines. That's not. I gave you every chance to be honest, I said, my voice low and hard, cutting her off. I gave you every single one. And you chose to go to Vermont. You chose to post a video. You chose him. She was crying now, really crying. I could hear it. That ugly, tight-throated, gasping sob. The kind she usually saved for movies or funerals. The kind she couldn't perform. This was real. This was the sound of her losing. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. Liam, I I love you. I don't want to lose you. I was silent for a beat. I looked at the coffee in my mug. You already did, I said. She went completely silent, as if those 4 words had just knocked the wind out of her. I can change, she said, her voice frantic, bargaining. I'll come home. Right now. I'll get the first flight. We can talk. We can go to counseling. Please. Liam, please, just don't end it like this. We've built a life. We've built a life. That was the line. That was the one. No, Miranda, I said, and my voice was perfectly calm again. The frost was back. See, that's where you're wrong. I stood up from the table. I built a life. You just treated it like a rental. She broke. I could hear it. I could hear the breath just shatter in her lungs. The sound that followed, it wasn't a sob. It was an ugly animal gasp of despair. The performance was over. The spotlight had cut out. The audience had gone home. And she was finally alone on that stage. I don't know what to do, she whispered. I walked to the sink. I looked out the window. The sun was fully up now. It was a beautiful, clear, honest day. That's not my problem anymore, I said, and I hung up. I placed the phone down, gently on the counter. I turned back to my mug, picked it up, and finished the last sip of my coffee. And for the first time in a very, very long time, it didn't taste bitter at all. I didn't plan to see her again. Ava, the woman from the party, the woman who, in a way, had been the messenger, the one who had, with an innocent scroll of her phone, handed me the proof that ended my life. At the time, I'd barely registered her face. I'd been in a fugue state, all the blood draining from my head as I stared at that 10-second, looping video of my humiliation. A few days passed after the call. A few strange, quiet, hollow days. The apartment was just an apartment. The silence I once felt, huge, and I didn't know what to do with it. I'd spent a decade shrinking myself to fit into Miranda's world, and now there was all this space. I started walking. A lot, not to anywhere, just out of the apartment that felt like a museum of a life that was no longer mine. I needed to feel my feet on the pavement. I needed to be around people who weren't me, and that's how it happened. It was a Thursday, gray, the kind of day that can't make up its mind. I was walking down 7th in the Village, a street I'd walked 1,000 times, and I looked up. It was a small cafe, one of those places that looks like it grew out of the sidewalk. Ivy was crawling up the brick. The windows were fogged with steam, and there were a few mismatched, brightly painted iron tables on the sidewalk. It was a complete antithesis of every sleek, cold, performative place Miranda had ever loved. And there she was, Ava, sitting alone by the window. She was in a big, chunky, mustard yellow sweater. Her hair was kind of messy, and she was just reading a book, sipping something pale from a big ceramic mug. My first instinct was to just keep walking, to just not. What would I even say? Hey, thanks for showing me the video that blew up my marriage? But just as I was about to look away, she looked up like she'd felt me. Our eyes met through the glass, and for a second, neither of us moved. I saw the recognition in her eyes. A little flicker of, oh, him. I should have kept walking, but she smiled. It wasn't that big, polite, oh God, this is awkward smile. It was just a small, quiet, hey of a smile, and she gave a little wave. Just a lift of her fingers from her mug. It was an invitation without pressure, and I hadn't felt that in, I couldn't remember how long. So I don't know why, I went in. The bell above the door chimed, a small, tinny sound. The place smelled like real coffee, not like a signature blend, but like burnt beans and cinnamon and old wood. Hey, I said, as I approached her table. My voice sounded weird, too loud. She smiled that same genuine smile. Hey, Liam. I gestured to the chair across from her. It was painted a chipped, pale blue. Is the seat taken? Only by my poor taste in scones, she said, sliding a half-eaten, tragic-looking scone to the edge of her plate. Seriously, try it if you're, into chalk. I laughed, a real, actual laugh. It startled me. It felt strange, like using a muscle I'd forgotten I had. I'll pass, I said, but thanks. I went to the counter, ordered a black coffee, and sat down. There was no awkwardness, no tension, just the sound of the espresso machine hissing behind us, and the occasional clink of plates from the kitchen. We talked for a bit about Jonah, about how his playlist hadn't changed since 2012, about how he was a terrible host, but a good friend, safe, easy, and then the silence came, and it was filled with it. I broke it. I had to. I cleared my throat. Listen, I don't even know if I ever thanked you for, the other night at the party. Ava put her mug down. She looked at me, not with pity. That was the thing. Her eyes were just steady. You don't have to thank me, Liam, she said, her voice soft. And God, I'm still so sorry. I didn't mean to drop that bomb on you. I shook my head. You didn't drop it, I said, and the words just came out. You just showed me where it had already landed. I'd been standing in the wreckage for a year. I didn't have a name for it. She nodded like she understood exactly what that meant. She posted it knowing people would see it. Liam, she said, her voice quiet. I think part of her wanted someone to report back to you. Yeah, I said, my voice hollow. She was expecting the guy who cries, the guy who begs, the almond milk guy. Ava tilted her head. She wasn't expecting the guy who files. No, I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. She wasn't expecting silence in return. We were quiet for a moment. Ava stirred her tea, though it didn't need stirring. I know what it's like, she said after a moment, her voice aimed at her mug. To wake up one morning and realize the person sleeping next to you has been emotionally just gone for a long, long time. And you were the last to notice. I looked at her, really looked at her. This wasn't just small talk. This was a scar. You've been through it. I asked. It wasn't a question. She nodded. She didn't get weepy. She just stated it. A fact, like the sky was gray. 3 years ago, my ex-husband, different circumstances, same hollow ending. She finally looked up at me. You walk around thinking you're the crazy one, thinking you're the one who's too sensitive or not enough. And then one day the fog clears and you just see. Yeah, I whispered, you see. I didn't need to ask for details. She didn't need to elaborate. Some stories were best left folded. Thanks, I said finally. My coffee was almost gone. For telling me that. And for not treating me like a tragedy. Ava tilted her head, and that small smile came back. But her eyes stayed serious. You don't look like a tragedy, Liam, she said. Her words, they landed. You look like someone who just took their first real breath in a while. And she was right. That's exactly what it felt like. I was here. I was in this cafe. The pain was still there. Yeah, it was a dull, heavy ache in my chest. But it wasn't the center of everything anymore. It wasn't the only thing. There was space. There was room for something else. For a bad scone. For a good cup of coffee. For this honesty. It wasn't flirty. It wasn't romantic. My God, I wasn't even close to being ready for that. It was honest. And after months, years of confusion and manipulation and just lies, that honesty, it felt like gold. It felt like air. We sat there for a while longer, just talking about nothing, about teaching, about her job in graphic design. It was just normal. It was the most normal 30 minutes I'd had in a year. Just before we stood to leave, Ava pulled a small, worn notebook from her bag. She tore out a page and jotted something down. She slid it across the table. It was her name and her number. Here, she said, and she almost looked embarrassed. And this is not that. I'm not hitting on the sad divorce guy. She took a breath. This is, in case you ever need someone in court, who's seen the truth, who's not on her side. I looked at the paper, then at her. A witness, I said. A witness, she confirmed, nodding. You're not in this alone, Liam, even if it feels like it. I took the paper. My fingers, I realized, weren't shaking. Thanks, I said. My voice was thick. That means more than you know. She smiled again. This time it was softer. I've got time, Liam. Take all of yours. As I stepped back out onto the sidewalk, the world didn't feel quite so sharp anymore. The sky above was still gray. The city was still loud. But inside, something had shifted. And for the first time in, I don't know, for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like the start. It's been a year since I stood on those courthouse steps, the sun on my face, and felt the world just settle. A year since I signed a paper that felt less like an ending and more like a correction, a historical correction. The apartment looks different. I mean, it's the same apartment, but it's not. The first thing I did, I painted the hallway. I just couldn't stand in that narrow, beige space where I'd watched her leave. I couldn't look at the spot where she'd stood and delivered that line about my mother. It's a deep, warm, calming blue now. And the couch, that gray, stiff, mid-century modern thing she spent a month picking out, the one that was more about looking good than feeling good, I sold it. I sold it for $50 on Craigslist. I almost paid the guy to take it. The couch I have now, it's big, it's soft, it's probably ugly, and it's the most comfortable thing I've ever owned. I threw out all the wine glasses. All of them. The ones she'd scared at me for holding by the bowl instead of the stem. I drink my water out of simple, heavy tumblers now. I bought a new coffee maker. And that photo, the one from Cannon Beach, the beautiful eye in the silver frame, it's not on the wall. It's in a box, in the back of the closet, tucked behind my old college yearbooks. It's just history now. It's not a monument to a failure I have to look at every day. It's just the fact, a thing that happened, a primary source document from a closed-off period. I still teach 8th grade history. I still wear my dusty sneakers. I still pace between the desks, and I still get way too excited about the Constitutional Convention. I'm still me. I'm still the reliable, solid, color codes as lesson planned guy. But solid, it doesn't feel like boring anymore. It doesn't feel like a liability. It doesn't feel like a failure. It just feels strong, like a foundation. The foundation I built, the one she'd been trying to crack for a decade and couldn't. And the silence in this apartment is different, too. Miranda's silence, that was a weapon. It was loud. It was heavy. It was a presence in the room. This is just peace. It's the sound of the radiator hissing on a cold night. It's the sound of me turning a page in a book. It's the sound of my own thoughts, and they're not panicked. They're not rehearsing. They're just mine. Ava, she's here. Sometimes. Like right now, she's on the new, ugly, comfortable couch, her feet tucked under her. She's in that same mustard yellow sweater I saw her in at the cafe. It's just her. She's reading a book, her brow furrowed, and she's not performing. She's not trying to be interesting. She's just here. She looks up like she can feel me staring from the kitchen. She doesn't give me that annoyed, "What? Why are you looking at me?" look that Miranda always did. She just raises an eyebrow, and she smiles. That same quiet, hey of a smile. "What?" she says. Is the history teacher brain ticking again? Are you mentally redating the fall of the Roman Empire? I laugh. A real laugh. No, I say. I was just thinking. I still haven't fixed that flickering light in the hallway. She rolls her eyes. I know. It's awful. It's like a strobe light in a bad horror movie. No, it's not. I argue, walking over, handing her a mug of tea. It's historical. It's got character. She takes the mug and she throws a sock at me. It hits me in the chest. "You're such a nerd, Liam," she says, but she's smiling. "Just call a damn electrician." And that's it. It's easy. It's light. We're not a fairy tale. We're not fixed. We're just two people. Two people who, as she said, had hollow endings. We're two survivors who found each other on that weird, foggy bridge. And we just decided to walk the rest of the way together. There's no gaslighting. There are no performances. When she's upset, she just says it. She just says, "Hey, that thing you said, that kind of hurt." And I listen and I apologize. And that's it. It's not a 3-day silent treatment. It's not a strategic withdrawal of affection. It's just honesty. And my God, after a decade of Miranda honesty, it feels like a superpower. It feels like air. And Miranda? I don't know. I honestly don't. I I heard through Jonah, who heard from someone that she actually moved to Vermont, that she tried to make it work with that guy, the vacation company guy, and I I heard it didn't last. I heard I heard he didn't like her performances any more than I did once he was the only one in the audience. But I don't really know. And the strangest part is the part one never would have believed, standing in that hallway with her smirk, is that I don't care. Not in a bitter way. Not in an I hope she's miserable way. Just in a factual way. She's not my what if. She's not my great tragedy. She's just a closed file. She's a primary source document in a chapter of my life that is now over. She's a lesson I finally learned. The proof. The proof doesn't always come in a 10-second high-definition geotag video. Sometimes the proof is just a feeling. It's that shrinking feeling. It's the silence that's just gone on for a little too long. It's the sound of a suitcase clicking down a hallway when it should be your anniversary. The hardest part is not seeing the proof. We all see it. We just lie to ourselves about it. The hardest part is accepting it. The hardest part is hanging up the phone. It's pouring out the cold coffee. It's walking into that lawyer's office and choosing yourself over the performance you've been forced to watch for years. I learned you can't build a life with someone who just treats you like a rental. You have to be the one who owns the space. You have to be the one who's solid. So let me know in the comments. When was the moment you finally saw the proof? When was the moment you just knew it was time to stop waiting by the phone? When did you finally just hang up? Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding your footing and walking to the fire.